Welcome, everyone, to Ignite CDA's January board meeting. If you'd all stand and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now there's an item 3 under the Executive Director's report that I need a motion from the board to remove, please, before we get started.
The public comment?
Item 3 under Executive.
Brian,
Oh, executive. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Not quite ready to open that up for discussion yet.
Okay. I'll make a motion to remove that from the agenda and continue it at another time, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries to remove item 3 from the Executive Director's report. Next up, it's time for public comment. Any public comment?
Oh, that's it.
Seeing none, then I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar, including the board meeting minutes for December 15th, 2021, approval of payables as submitted, and approval of the district monthly financial statements.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I didn't hear the second, Chairman.
Brennan?
You have a good ear.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. 2022 Draft Annual Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to refresh everybody about our process for dealing with annual reports, there was a change in the urban renewal statutes in the summer of 2011 that now requires an urban renewal agency to accept public comment on their annual report prior to submittal to City Council. The following Ignite CDA process has been established to meet the new statute requirements. The draft 2021 annual report to Council was posted on the Ignite CDA website a week prior to this board meeting. A public notice ran in the Coeur d'Alene Press a week prior to this board meeting, indicating that the Ignite CDA board will accept public comment on the annual report at this board meeting. The notice states that the draft report is posted online and also states that written public comments are welcome and can be submitted via mail or email. Public comment on the Ignite CDA annual report will be a discrete agenda item at this board meeting. When this agenda item is addressed, an overview of the annual report will be provided, and then the chairman will then ask if there's any public comment on the annual report. The board will then listen to public comment and then review any written public comments received. The board can then choose to discuss any issues as they wish, directing the executive director to work with the chairman on making any modifications to the draft annual report prior to submission to City Council. The board will then approve the draft annual report via motion with any proposed modifications as noted. So with that, I'll just kind of briefly run through the annual report. I'll put it on the screen. Jeff, could you please put that PDF file of the annual report up for me, please?
I'm waiting for Chaz to respond.
We have a remote IT person helping us this evening. And there he is. So I'll run through the annual report. So basically, we have an introduction and a little bit of an overview on our mission and vision. Then we talk about the long-term strategic goals for the agency, as well as the short-term tactical goals, which are at the bottom of this page here to kind of help us achieve where we're heading. Then we kind of just list who's on the board and their different positions. And then we give 2021 agency updates for the different initiatives. So we talk about the Health Corridor District Initiative. We talk about property divestitures that happened in 2021. We talk about the Atlas Mill Site Project Initiative. We talk about the Four Corner Master Plan and any updates that we have been moving forward with on that plan. We talk about the Higher Education Campus Initiative, Midtown Placemaking, the North Idaho Centennial Trail Foundation partnership as it pertains to the BLM lease area with the city, the La Crosse Avenue Roadway Extension Initiative, the Sherman Square Rotary Park, the Rotary Centennial Park Initiative, the Museum of North Idaho Site Development Initiative, the City of Coeur d'Alene projects in our Lake District that the board approved for this fiscal year's budget. Talk a little bit about the Urban Land Institute, our Riverstone West projects, as well as the Mill River Participation Agreement, our partnership with the Coeur d'Alene Downtown Association, our communications and outreach, key partnerships, and our strategic property portfolios in the Lake, River, and Atlas districts. We close out with a summary, and then we have a few exhibits on the report that you've all seen. Exhibit A just kind of lists all our past and current key agency partnership projects by district. We have all the projects in our Lake District that we've accomplished over the years, our River District, and the Atlas District, and the Health Corridor District. One of the final exhibits is our kind of a look at our Lake District strategic property portfolio, the status of those properties, as well as what's going on out on the Atlas project. You can see this graphic shows you kind of the different areas that we have under agreement, and we have our recent RFP for areas 5A and 13 that we include in the report, and just kind of showing where those areas are by district. Then the final element of the report is our audited financial statements for fiscal year 2021. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you to solicit any public comment that might be available.
Thank you,
I did
Tony.
not receive anything via mail or email.
Okay, thank you, Tony. I would like to open up this board meeting for public comment regarding our annual report. Seeing no people wanting to just provide public comment, the annual report is closed.
And I would just look for a motion to go ahead and authorize the annual report to be sent to City Council.
I'll make that motion. The 2021 draft Ignite CDA annual report to go to City Council for approval.
Second.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just when we do that, Tony, will you be doing a presentation that time?
I leave that up to the discretion of council leadership if they want me to come present, or if they just want to just read the report.
Okay, well, I will encourage it from here and in that venue too, because I think that's very helpful when you're able to do that in person. So.
Okay.
Any other comment? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks, Tony. Next up is committee reports. Finance Committee, Mr. Hoover, our 2022 audit. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. This came to briefly present the results of the financial statement audit for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2021. I'll just go over, I would mention that I met last week by teleconference with the Finance Committee, and we did an in-depth review of the financial statements. And so I'll just give you the short and the quick of it here, the two audit reports and the results for that. So the first report is on page 1 of the audit report package, and this is the independent auditor's report on the actual financial statements themselves, so the balances, the numbers, the presentation format, and disclosures in the financial statements. And so this report, I always like to highlight the second bold paragraph, which is management's responsibility for the financial statements. So as you all know, Ignite's management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements that are free of material misstatement caused whether due to error or fraud. That includes having a system of internal controls that is properly designed and implemented so as to be able to produce financial statements that are free from material misstatement. And then below that is the auditor's responsibility, and my responsibility is to plan and perform the audit in accordance with the professional standards and to gather enough evidence to be able to form an opinion that the financial statements are in fact free of material misstatement caused whether due to error or fraud. And I'm pleased to report to you that, in my opinion, the financial statements, based upon the evidence I've gathered, are free from material. They're fairly presented in all material respects, which is that's what we call a clean audit opinion, an unmodified audit opinion, and that's the best you can do. So that's what you guys would expect. That pretty much takes care of the first audit report. The second audit report is required in a governmental audit. And this is called, it's in the very back of the audit package, and this is called the Report on Internal Controls over Financial Reporting and on Compliance and Other Matters based on an audit performed in accordance with governmental auditing standards. In a nutshell, this report just states that under governmental auditing standards, if as a part of planning and performing my audit, I become aware as a result of my procedures of any what is defined in this report as either a significant deficiency in internal controls or worse, a material weakness in internal controls, then I would be under governmental auditing standards. I would be required to bring that to yours and the public, anyone who reads the audit report, your attention. We call it a finding. I'm pleased to report to you that there were no, I had no reportable deficiencies in the system of internal controls. So that will conclude my audit presentation. Short and sweet, unless you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Scott.
I open it up to questions.
And just, I did receive the signed management representation letter from Tony, so that's the last piece of information I have for my file. So I'll go home and scan that into the binder, and I'll issue the financial statements tomorrow to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, I need a motion now to approve the fiscal year 2021 audit report.
I would move to accept the audit report.
It's tough to talk when there's an echo. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's a terrible echo.
If we get the Zoomers to mute their microphones when they're not talking, you won't get that feedback.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the audit.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just, it's always a good job. I mean, we've come to expect it, but this can be and is a very big thing. So it's always a good thing to have a nice, clean
audit.
simple report.
Very good point.
So,
Yeah, very good point.
We can appreciate that.
It's been good working with Mr. Hoover, and we appreciate it. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next report is the Atlas Project RFP Scoring Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to invite Phil Boyd up to the podium. He'll kind of give an overview of the 3 proposals submitted per the RFP for areas 5A and 13, and then we'll kind of work with Commissioner Mandel and Commissioner Metz to discuss the committee's recommendation.
Thank you, Tony, Chairman Hoskins, and board members.
Welcome.
So I will quickly walk through these just to get everyone's bearings. The 2 parcels that went out were 5A and Area 13 down here. So the solicitation went out. You could propose either individually on both of them. Ignite received 1 submittal. Individual submittal for 5A, 1 individual submittal for 13, and then 1 combined submittal for 5A and 13. This is the 1 individual submittal from Bluegrass for Area 13. This is the plan view that, to give you guys your bearings, the river is down here. It shows a condominium building. In this location, Atlas Road is up in here. You'd see parking up in this area, surface parking up in this area. This is just another one of the plan views. The documents requested plan views and elevation views of the buildings. And so this is the submittal, and you'll see there's kind of different levels of detail that the respondents provided. These are inspirational photos intended to kind of ignite an idea of what the structure might look like. You guys might recognize some of these buildings. This is the ones that Miller-Stauffer has previously designed, and they were the ones that had put together the concepts for Bluegrass. Just a couple other images. And then there's a commercial component the board might remember for Area 13, and again, this was intended to give you an idea of what the concept might look like. The next submittal was for Riverstone Holdings, which is a group made up of John Stone, John Butler, Jason Vidati, and Chris Pereira. You guys might recognize some of those names. And they submitted on both projects. And you can see, again, orienting yourself, the rivers down here, Area 13, Area 5A, and then there's perspective views of the proposed buildings. This is residential over commercial, quite a bit of commercial on the ground floor, and again, residential over commercial and parking. Both of these have underground parking facilities in them. There's no surface parking on 13, and there is surface parking in the back here on 5A. And Chairman, I'm glad to take any questions, or if you have for me or Tony along the way, if the board is after some more detail.
Okay.
Just some more perspective views here. One of the things that they had, the Riverstone Holdings Group, Architects West put this concept together for them. A big component of figuring out how to make these two properties connect together and feel like they're one unit was a big design feature of Steve Roth did this with some of the architects at Architects West. Just some more imagery here. The brew pub, which is a potential tenant that Ignite is actually bringing to the table for the developer here. The brew pub would be situated down here at park level. Some more images. This is looking back towards Coeur d'Alene, so the river would be on your right. It gives you a little bit of an idea of the scale of the product.
Let's see, a question. You mentioned there isn't parking right there, but also you mentioned a brew pub, and so where do the patrons?
So there's, you can see here that it shows the diagonal, there's diagonal parking here.
Oh, okay.
And there's also diagonal parking here. The facility has underground parking, but there's no surface parking shown here. One of the elements of the PUD strongly encouraged commercial use here, and as part of that, there was a parking allowance provided that if you built a food and beverage facility over a certain square footage, you could count a certain amount of off-site parking
Right.
towards satisfying your parking requirement. There's still a need to satisfy parking here, which is one of the, at the conceptual level, they show this, and it's really cool. This plaza is great and all those things, but you still have to park it. So is all the parking underground? Which you could do that for your patrons. All your patrons would have to go underground to
So
park.
it's not just for the residents, it
No.
would be for the...
And it's one of those things at this conceptual level, you ask about that, well, we haven't quite got figured out, but we understand we'll have to deal with it. And so it could be that this plaza isn't quite this big, that it has a parking component with it at some point.
There's definitely advantages, though, to having similar buildings on 5A and 13. There's synergy there
Yep.
doing that,
Yep. No, it's a good-looking proposal.
yes.
So then the last one was from Toll Brothers, and this is on 5A. Again, to get you guys your bearings, the Spokane River is down here. This is Atlas Road. North is up. Toll Brothers, you might recall, was successful on this piece of property, areas 3 and 4 just to the west. This is 5B here, and they're proposing a similar townhome product type here with a piece of commercial on the end. And this commercial, there's already commercial on this side, and you might recall that that's a requirement of the PUD in your proposals. There's a piece of commercial here. And then the townhome layout that you can see here, the alley would continue through. On this side, this is the Butler project over here that they previously acquired. They have duplexes and single-family homes with an alley loaded in that. And then Toll Brothers provided these as representative architecture of what the townhomes might look like. These are actually from Area 3 and 4. So this is their proposed buildings on Area 3 and 4 to the west. So this is a 4-unit townhome, 6-unit townhome. These actually have rooftop decks. You can see the people up there. These are on the north side of Area 3, so it's not necessarily relevant to Area 5A, but just pointing out some details. This is another one of the townhomes. And then this is the commercial unit, just also an inspirational photo. So that is the rundown of the product type, and then here's a summary of the pricing. And the board has this in your packet, but just for purposes of completeness, Bluegrass Development, they didn't propose on 5A. There's their proposal on Area 13. Toll Brothers proposed on 5A, but not on 13. And so the combined total of those is $5.5 million. And then Riverstone Holdings proposed on both, and there's their combined total. So about a $1.1 million difference. Any questions for me?
So the process that the committee used was, once the proposals was received, we had an initial meeting to discuss the proposals and kind of saw that, we had 3 proposing entities, and one group proposed on one, and one group proposed on another, and then one group proposed on both. So the committee was intrigued by the overture for the unified approach to combining 13 and 5A together. So the next step they deemed was necessary was to interview the Riverstone Holdings group to make sure they understood all the dynamics and elements of their proposal. So that interview was held kind of mostly virtually with the committee members and the members of the Riverstone Holdings group. Very good conversation, lasted about an hour. A lot of, well, basically all of the questions were answered and addressed to kind of help solidify any concerns or any questions that the committee had. So after that, the committee met yesterday to form a recommendation for the Ignite board regarding how to move forward with an award for 5A and 13. I sent you their minutes yesterday. I hope you all had a chance to review that since it was kind of tight timing. But just to kind of cut to the chase, then I'll invite Commissioner Mandel and Commissioner Metz to weigh in. But the committee recommended that the board award both 5A and 13 to the Riverstone Holdings Group. And with that, Commissioner Mandel or Commissioner Metz, do you have any comments?
Oh, I guess, go ahead, Brennan.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, as Tony described, we follow the scoring process. He showed the financials, but we also look more at just the finances. And so given the location of 5A and 13 as being so central to that to the Atlas project, that cohesion with the similar styles right at 5A, 513 by the park was really important to us, and it reflected kind of the vision of Atlas. So that's kind of what we took into consideration, in addition to the other scoring criteria, was what best reflects what we're trying to achieve with this project, and what, given their proximity to each other and their location, what best represents our vision. Commissioner Metz?
Takes a while to unmute everything. Yeah, I solely agree with Brennan, and we really were looking at the vision, and the Riverstone Holdings Group really hit the vision for this project for these 2 areas. And so that's really what we were looking for, was a group that really hit the vision, but also had that cohesive flow through the development, and it will be really that will serve really as the anchor and the community center. So it was really important to really hit the vision on these 2 areas, like Commissioner Mandel mentioned. So with that, we'll open it up for any questions.
Tony, can you remind us who's on the selection committee?
Who's on the committee? So from the city, it's City Minister Troy Tymeson, Christy Wood from City Council, and Hillary Anderson, Planning Director. From Ignite, it's myself, Danielle, Commissioner Mandel, Commissioner Metz. We have Phil Boyd from Welch Comer. Then we have our Heartland team of Matt Anderson and Ben Wharton. And we also have Dale Hatt from BLA Architects.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure everybody was
EW.
aware of that. It's not just an Ignite subcommittee. It's quite a collaboration. Thanks.
So the recommended proposal nets Ignite quite a bit less money than the two separate proposals, right?
1.1 million.
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks like a lot more intense proposal. Is there some things that make up for it as far as long-term increment maybe over the other two proposals?
So the analysis, Heartland performed an analysis on projected increment, and it came about a push basically between taking a higher price on 5A from Toll Brothers versus what the Riverstone Holding Group was offering. So they went out 10 years, and based on the product mix and the capacity and density, it was about even on tax increment revenue.
So it brought it up to
And I'd also
even,
like to add,
right?
I did,
It brought the lower one
I
up to
just
even in 10 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Olivia.
and we also looked at the public good of this. So there's a lot of public improvements that will really benefit the public more than the other two as well. So we thought that that was important enough to maybe solidify that the fact that it was a lower amount too.
My one other question, I think I know this, but this is kind of like a planned unit development. And what I'm getting at is this proposal, they're locked into this proposal essentially as it's been presented with the conceptual drawings and so forth.
Yes, and as Phil was saying, when these guys put RFPs or proposals together, they don't go down to a really deep level of planning because it's very expensive and they don't know if they're going to get the job. So if the board does award this project to the Riverstone Holdings, then the work starts to really trying to drill in and kind of see how this is all going to work. But one of the answers that we did get in our interview with the team was that this did pencil from an ROI standpoint. So we're confident that the project works. It's just really kind of getting it all dialed in and getting final unit count and the parking solution, as Phil mentioned, kind of all squared away.
Right. So I understand there'll be more documentation coming later on, but if we agree to this, this should look like what we're seeing here, substantially.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Well, I can appreciate that, yes, it looks like it'll be less than we would get. When we look at the whole project, we've certainly come out, I think, better than we thought on a lot of those early estimates in the complete picture. And I also really like that combined vision and while no part of, the Atlas Park is more important than the other, that is a pretty central key, cornerstone of it. And so, yeah, I like the looks of it, known entity and having it together. I think that's good. And I think, in my mind, it's a legitimate kind of trade-off consideration. It's not always about just the dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other comment?
I just think the scoring committee did an outstanding job on this, and they made the right decision. It looks good.
That's quite an in-depth scoring process.
Yeah.
I would like to add, just for everybody's knowledge, during the interview process, the committee was a little concerned about timing and making sure that they make all of their deadlines and timelines. So what we have discovered is, the fact that they did put together a team that has a project manager and other entities that will help carry the project forward in a timely manner, we felt comfortable with that. So I think that is important to point out just because of our past experience with some of the developers, so.
Thank you, Olivia.
And what is the hopeful timeline on that? If it all goes, I mean, if we approve this and it goes forward,
Well, when you go into the DDA process, they have to start building within,
Right, so that if they are given the awards, then the next step would be enter into an A&E, so we negotiate timeframes to kind of get everything squared away and phasing and really kind of get an idea of what their timeframe was going to be, and then we'll lock that in with a DDA document.
but would you expect we'd see something in 2022? At the end of this?
I think it was 20.
They had indicated during the interview process that they intended to open the doors in 2025.
Okay,
I think it was, so you can imagine that they would build through design in this year, start construction in 2023, 2024. So it's a couple-year project.
yep, okay, thanks.
any more comment? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept the selection committee's recommendation.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a proposal, I'll make a motion that we accept the selection committee's recommendation.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, everyone. Thanks, selection committee. That motion carries. Next item, Commissioner Jordan, do you have an update from the Parking Commission?
Just real briefly, let's see, for December of 2021, parking revenues were $63,642. So our total year-to-date, and this is fiscal year-to-date because we're on the fiscal year there, so the total is $149,833, and that is $15,603 over the year-to-date last year. Let's see, we've got, on those discount permits for the local citizens, we've got 238 of the city resident permits and 90 of the county resident permits.
Nice.
That'll do it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jordan. Next up is the Executive Director's Report. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item is Resolution 22-01, destruction of semi-permanent and temporary public records. As the commissioners know, we do this annually. We bring this forward to kind of basically take care of documents per our record retention policy. So for this year, under this resolution, temporary public records dated prior to October 2019 will be destroyed, as well as semi-permanent public records dated prior to October 1st, 2016 would be destroyed, and that's per our record retention policy guidelines.
I'll need a motion from the board member for this.
Well, I would make a motion to approve Resolution 20-01, destruction of semi-permanent and temporary public records.
I'll second your motion.
And just a question, Tony, is that like one of those professional shredding trucks come, for the actual destruction of it, or?
I didn't quite hear what you said.
Oh, how do you actually accomplish the destruction of the records?
Well, we actually destroy the paper copies that we actually put into a recycling bin to be destroyed, and then electronic copies are deleted from any files.
Okay, thanks.
I'll do a roll call.
Roll call.
Commissioner Arman,
Yes.
Widmeyer,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Metz,
Yes.
Hoskins,
Yes.
Chapkus,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, is to ask Phil Boyd to come up and give an overview of the Atlas project and update, as well as a couple other discussion items and action items.
Thanks, Tony. Let's see, get this one. Okay. Again, Chairman Hoskins, glad to take questions as we move through this. I put this slide up to get the board's bearings again, because sometimes I start talking about construction phases and RFP areas, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Phase 2 construction area is the area that you see in the black here. Phase 3 is the blue area here, and Phase 4 is the Mount Hink area that I'm going to talk a little bit about. And Phase 1 is the area over here where there's currently homes under construction. Also, Tommy LaRiviere is here. If you guys have questions for him, we'll get into some details that the board might have questions that Tommy is best to answer. Phase 1, the concrete raised intersection, the last one, which is right here. They completed placing the concrete for that this week, and it won't be open, but it's completed there. All the other road work and remaining road and sidewalk work is going to start once the weather gets better. So we'll play that by ear to see how it goes. Phase 2, if you've driven by, you can see that Mount Hink is getting bigger. LaRiviere up to this point's moved about 46,000 cubic yards just to level off Mount Hink, because we needed a staging area to excavate pit 1 to put it on top of that leveled off area. There's about 50,000 yards of material that's been excavated from pit 1 and put on top of pit 2. Portions of that were processed in topsoil and structural soils, a very small portion, about 5,000 yards. And then they continue to move about 6,000 yards a day. So not that you can go on the site, but if you stood on the trail and looked in there, it's a pretty impressive operation. I was down there one day, and I think I counted about 18 different pieces of equipment running out there. The lumber lane and sewer and the Atlas Road water will start next week, and so that's the segment that goes through here. This is lumber lane, and obviously Atlas Road, there's some work that will start down in here. This is a kind of a challenging photograph to look at, because it's one of our topographic photographs where we surveyed with an aerial drone. But it gives you, this is actually a raised part, and this is actually a lower part, but it gives you an idea of the magnitude. There's a vehicle down there, so it kind of gives you the scale of how big this operation is. It's quite an operation that we've got going out there. Just to give you a little bit of a perspective, I was curious about 6,000 yards a day. That translates into about $30,000 a day of expense to move that. So that's how much money we're spending per day to move that material. A couple other photographs. This is them sorting different materials on the site. This is actually down on Lumber Lane, looking back upwards, and eventually this will all be gone, hopefully, if our next idea that we're going to present to you comes to fruition. This is a photograph. This is what Veneer Road right here. This is Atlas Road coming down, and this is a week or so ago, but you can see the house is being under construction there. So, again, give you guys your bearings here. The Mount Hink area is up in here. You guys have seen this photograph or this plan view before. We've struggled with what to do with Mount Hink. In prior times, when we first started this project in 2018, there wasn't really any economical thing to do with it. You couldn't move the material and sell the land and even break even on it. The tax increment also didn't, that was kind of a challenging thing to think about. So as time went on, though, and real estate prices took off, we kept looking at this, and Mayor Widmeyer, former Mayor Widmeyer, had continued to push on me on occasion and say, gosh, we really should figure out what to do with that piece of property and see if we can't turn it into a viable development. So we continued to kind of think about that and looked at the ITD pit that's up on Ramsey Road, which is this location. So this is Ramsey Road, and this is Marie Drive. The Croc Center is right here. And we kept looking at that pit. And over the years, ITD had been working on some regulatory challenges they had there. But eventually they got those solved in beginning of 2021. So that pit started to look like a potential place that we could take the soils to. So we looked at that mountain, said if we took that away, what could we turn it into? And this is what we could potentially turn it into. So what it was, let's say we had the potential to do 19 single-family homes here and a bunch of green space. If we remove that, we can turn it into 27 single-family homes, and in this scenario, 45 townhomes. And so the next question is what sort of land value does that bring? And would it pay to move the material? Well, how can we move the material? One way to do it is to use this on-road route here. So you can imagine all that material getting loaded into standard dump trucks, driving through all the signals, depositing it here, getting leveled out, compacted, and then the truck coming back and picking up another load. You can do that, but it's going to take 4 months to do it. The other way to do it would be if we had the opportunity to use the Prairie Trail, we could use off-road trucks, which carry about 3 times as much soil as an on-road truck. This little stretch of road would get some abuse by the off-road trucks because they're so big and have so much weight in them. But as we worked through the ideas, and LaRiviere and Tommy and I worked quite a bit back and forth on this, brainstorming ideas, and got to the point, well, what if we just throw in the mix to rebuild both these sections? Would it still be a viable financial scenario? And so we looked at that, and this is the way that it shakes out. So option 1, which is an on-road option, it's about $5.1 million to move everything. When we go develop the land, do a PUD amendment, final plat it, build all the infrastructure, and there's going to be something that some issue that comes up. So I just threw $100,000 in project contingency. It costs about $6.2 million to do all that work. But the estimated land sales value is about $6.1 million. So you're still in the hole, but now you have a viable piece of ground that will potentially generate taxes. And we just did a quick increment calculation over 15 years of about $5.7 million. When you go the other route on option 2, if we were able to negotiate access to the Prairie Trail, it shortens it up, and you can see it saves about $1.2 million because there's just so much more material going at a faster rate, and it shortens it up significantly. All the other similar costs to entitle the land, and then the same land sale value. So you generate about $1.1 million in land sale revenue under option 2. So we've been kind of nursemaiding this thing and advancing it along. And one of the key components is being able to deposit material in there under an agreement with ITD. So we have worked with ITD. We drafted an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. They're currently in the process of reviewing it. We got it to ripe enough where Tony said, let's bring it to the board. And if it looks good to the board, we can at least get their authorization to sign it and move forward with that. So I'll pause at that point, Chairman Hoskins, and take some questions I imagine that are out there.
Questions?
I have a question, but I might be getting ahead, but I was interested in the ITD land there. Isn't that 40 acres there, or is it 20?
It is, yes.
40, okay. So that might be jumping ahead to ask about the disposition of the ITD land.
You're jumping ahead.
Sorry.
Did they provide a timeline on when they might get back to you on the MOU?
We got an initial response from the District 1 engineer, and he said, he provided us his comments. And one of the comments is he wanted to see the hauling details through here, because they run operations out of here, and they want to really understand how our ingress, egress, cycle time is going to work. Also, how are we going to leave it for them, and how are we going to actually place the material? What will the lifts look like? Kind of the technical details. That is also one of the action items for the board's consideration, is putting together those plans and specifications and then doing the geotechnical work. So we can hand them a set of documents that says, here's what we intend to do, an engineered set of plans. And that's why there's two action items for the board's consideration. One is Chairman Hoskins authorizing him to execute the MOU, and then also authorizing an agreement with Welch Comer so we can go prepare those engineering documents that are part of the MOU, so ITD knows exactly what you intend to do in their pit. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Well, so the 38,000 would be spent prior to the MOU approval.
Well, what I would suggest is that if the board is willing to authorize spending that 38,000, we take that authorization, then we continue to work with ITD to see if they really are going to move forward with the MOU. If they give us that green light, and our understanding is that they are on board and they want to move forward with the MOU, then we start spending money. If they say, no, we're really not sure, then we'll just kind of hold off and not spend any money until we really get their buy-in. And if ultimately we don't get any buy-in, we don't spend any money.
But it was necessary to prepare some information for the MOU to be approved, I understood.
It is, and we've done some of that. The board previously authorized us to do a bunch of work, what you're seeing some of the fruits of now. It just didn't take us, we've been trying to do this thing incrementally so we don't go spend a bunch of money and it never comes to fruition. So we're doing in these incremental steps. We've now gotten to the point where ITD says, yeah, we probably think this was a viable option. We had to do work with the EQ from environmental regulatory issues. We plowed that ground. We're now just at the point where the scales might actually tip over here, and if ITD says, yeah, we think this will work, well, then we need to rush out and put the engineering plans together. And the thinking is if we get the authorization now, and if in a week from now, or 2 or 3 days from now, ITD says, yeah, we think this looks good, then we can immediately start on the work. Because the objective is to do this hauling during the next, 2 to 3 to 4 months. We don't want to start this in June when the traffic is just crazy, crazier, maybe I should say. We would prefer to start it very quickly while the traffic is relatively light compared to the summertime.
How many yards is there? Again, I forgot.
We're estimating 400,000 yards.
Yeah.
Commissioner English.
Well, it's very intriguing. As somebody that trail gets a lot of use, and people don't realize, or even in the winter, and we're now, the clock is running, we might be wishful think that we're turning a little page on winter or whatever, but, so, is there a practical plan to where would you detour the bike trail and walking trail traffic, and then how long would this take if we let that happen?
So, and that's why, and Tony deserves the credit for this idea. I've been primarily focused on this yellow alignment because it's so efficient to me and makes so much sense, and I appreciate the public disruption of it. But as we dug into it, Tony wisely said, we need to think of an option that if we don't get that kind of access from the city, for all the reasons you've described, then we need to have this other option. So that's why we would potentially start in the red route. And if we go to the city and the city says, gosh, we just don't want to provide that much disruption to the public and close the Prairie Trail, then we'll stay on the red route. However, if the city says, well, golly gee, we'll let you close that stretch of trail, but you're going to save $1.2 million, so maybe we can figure out a deal there that will lease you that trail. And there's some negotiation that occurs there because the trail minimizes traffic disruption in a huge way. vehicle traffic. And we understand it disrupts pedestrian traffic on the trail. And those are things for council members to weigh the balance for the community on what's appropriate there.
And I'm sure we'll get input. So.
Yes, exactly. But because the opportunity exists, the pricing that you see here, and Tommy can speak to this if you'd like him to, there's some advantages in this time of year to have a contractor do the work because they're not off doing a bunch of other work. We've been able to negotiate a pretty aggressive price, meaning lower price than we had previously estimated on this because he has staff that he would not normally have to deploy on this project. If we get past, April, May, the economics start to fall apart, and we would probably have to wait until later in the year when the construction season starts to slow down again.
Who pays to haul all the material?
It would be an Ignite expense.
So that was what, 5 million?
Yeah.
6 million?
It's this number here.
5.1
Yeah.
or
Or-
4 to
or-
5 million.
Or 3.9, yeah.
Yeah, 3.9 sounds cheap.
And we don't have a problem spending money like that outside of our,
There's no issue spending money outside. We've talked to Council Quaid about that. As long as we're, mitigating Atlas project site within the Atlas district, it's not an issue. We, just to kind of follow up, Phil did a great job kind of laying this out, but this is basically kind of an opportunity for a win-win, maybe a triple win here, that we can kind of help get rid of our Mount Hink issue. We can help ITD remediate a pit that they need to remediate, and we can also set the stage for some great civic partnerships that have been kind of conceptualized that could happen down the road. So it's an opportunity that's in front of us right now. Timing is somewhat critical because of what Phil just laid out for labor and economics, but it also, as Phil has on the screen now, kind of preps the stage for us to really do some very creative development on our Mount Hink area and our Atlas project site that even could be, if the board would so choose to discuss this in the future, maybe some type of, what's the correct terminology?
Essential professional housing.
Professional housing.
The term's been, Commissioner Metz provided us that term is the current, the housing is becoming an issue for professionals, teachers, police officers, nurses, doctors. And maybe that's an opportunity where this piece of property is able to support that endeavor as we move forward with it. Because currently, you saw before, there's not much density in that configuration, but this configuration has much more density.
Hey, one other question, that 400,000 yards, so is that structural, Phil?
No. So the majority of that material, approximately 200,000 yards of it is sawdust, and the other 200,000 yards is a mixture of topsoil, shot rock, non-structural material. So whatever were to go here, it would not be, you wouldn't put a multi-story building there or even a single-story building. The current condition of that pit is also the bottom of it. It's unlikely that it's structural. Because just over time, it's just, soil has just been placed in there, trees, stumps, there's a variety of things in there. So it's not economically feasible to turn this into a structural site.
So that's pretty much sterilized from any kind of building construction then?
Probably.
It might be maybe a parkland or something like that?
Recreational sports fields. And back to an earlier question you had asked, Commissioner Jordan, there has been some preliminary work we assisted the city with just conceptually here that shows recreational fields in here. There's been some partnerships discussed with the neighbors and other communities. But at the time, right now, I don't think it's ripe enough that we can roll it out here because I don't think council has had opportunity to kind of vet it all. And so we didn't want to show those things here, but there has been some discussions with other entities.
But the fill that's going in there, it could be made structurally sound enough to support, some ball fields or parkland or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I know we've got ball fields over some of the old landfills on Ramsey Road, so
Yep,
I guess it
absolutely.
could work,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's part of the geotechnical work in here is part of the geotech work we're gonna go do is how do we build the cake with the materials that we have to minimize the settlement over the long term? It will settle in some way, shape, or form. We don't know exactly when and where or how, but we can figure out ways to minimize that settlement. So maybe it can become a productive parcel of property for the community in the future.
Well, I think, I really like this concept, just looking at it. I mean, I can see that there's some, to make it happen, there's some predictable pain points, but at the same time, when we think back originally, and it was going to be, I don't know, like a wilderness walking trail or something, but, in terms of what's there, yeah, that's a big mound of dirt and all of that, but in terms of like a walking trail or something, it's not much. And so the trade of having it actually, usable, buildable, and again, at all levels of housing, we need more housing options and elements. So at least for me, from my seat, yeah, it's worth pursuing. And if we could make something else, buildable, some element, yeah, I think we ought to do everything we can to explore that, and if possible, make it happen.
Commissioner English, I think you bring out a good point about the housing component. There's lots of discussions about it, but to stimulate a private party to head down that path, there's a lot of unknowns about it. And this might be the opportunity where Ignite leads the way in showing, here's how a private party could do it. You're a public entity, but kind of in this interest, you might be demonstrating how a private party could do essential professional housing. And so you become a demonstration project, plow the ground, figure out all the bugs, and now you take that body of information and you can hand it to a private developer and say, here's how we did it successfully here, similar to the way you did the shoreline restoration. That was a real demonstration project that other folks might not have been able to muscle through, but you guys had multiple reasons for doing it the way you did.
Well, we're getting rid of a hill and filling a hole.
But no low-cost housing in there. It's professional housing. So where do their assistants live? Or this is the issue that I hear over and over again in the media. And we're not addressing the low-cost housing. It's an opportunity. We could do that too.
And all that remains to be vetted. We're just tossing out one idea here.
Sure, but you're definitely showing us there's options here, and it definitely makes sense. It does. If the end result is satisfying, right now, professional housing isn't exciting to me. I'd like to see low-cost housing,
And just to remind the board, what Tony said here is this is just one little step. We're just taking the step for doing the engineering plans, authorizing the MOU. If all that comes together, the next big step is to actually get serious about this here. And so what Tony had suggested is if we get through the MOU with ITD, there might be a special call meeting with the board to really dig into the particulars about this, because there's a lot of work behind this that I'm not taking the time to show the board, just because it's probably more detail than you need at this point. But if it does get forward, we would have a special call meeting, and the board would have opportunity to really dig into the details of what makes up this effort here.
Obviously, if you did low-cost housing, the numbers wouldn't be this good.
Exactly, down here on the bottom, yeah, that's correct.
Tony, where does that money come from?
Pardon?
Where does that money come from?
The big numbers?
$5 million to move it.
Well, depending on how this goes, if we get some areas closed here quickly, we will have sufficient funds within the Atlas District to fund this. If push comes to shove and we need money, we still have the ability to borrow from the River District's $7 million note. So we do have the horsepower to do this, should the board want to, hopefully with option A and not option B.
Yeah, the numbers don't look bad if Mount Hink is redeveloped at market rate, but and I'm not opposed to doing affordable housing either. I just say that's a kind of a blank slate we got to develop.
It's just hard to pen out when you do it. It's just.
One other quick question. When you're hauling Mount Hink away, I'm trying to remember, is there a pit under Mount Hink?
There is.
That's pit 2?
3 and 4.
So they dug a pit and then they filled it. They didn't, yeah, okay, they didn't just put it on top of the virgin ground.
Right, Commissioner
Yeah.
Jordan, you've been around here long enough, you might remember Moen Concrete was right there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we anticipate that when we get.
Or Central, was it
Central Central was over here.
Side it.
Yeah.
And so we anticipate when we get through Mount Hink, our quantities actually include going through Mount Hink and down to what we believe was native ground. And again, that's based on the best information we have available at this
Yeah.
point.
Do we have some fill to bring the hole back up to grade to develop?
Not really.
Okay.
And so and then when I say not really, there'll be some material, excuse me, generated on other parts of the site. The way that this would work, this concept that you see right here, you would come through this road and it would drop down to an elevation that's parallel, about the same height as the Prairie Trail right here. So there's quite a steep slope that comes, not steep, I think it's a 5% road that comes down to this point right here. So we're keeping this lower in here. Part of
Okay.
not to get too far into the details.
No, I understand. There may be some things that come up in the future to minimize that issue too. I know it's kind of a moving target.
And there may also be, as we dig through this and get in there, we might come across structural material. And even what La Riviere is doing right now, we're pulling through Lumber Lane and they're running the scrapers through there and it's unsuitable. All of a sudden they run through this band of structural soils. And instead of taking it to the top, they run it and drop it into pit 1. The same thing would accomplish here as we start moving down. If they encounter structural soils, we're not hauling it to Ramsey, we're keeping it on site.
But you're not going to sift through all those 400,000 yards and get the good stuff?
No,
That would take forever.
Probably not. It depends on what we find. What we currently have on site, that was the test run I mentioned earlier. We did a test run of the soil that was on site, and it doesn't generate enough structural soils to be worth our time, worth your money. But as we get through other parts of it, we may come across stuff that is worth processing, and it's more cost-effective to process it on site.
Do you have an educated guess for a timeline?
Well, if we were to do this route, it's about a three-month project.
When to start?
February. We'd love to start like as soon as we possibly can. If we were able to start February 1, we'd be tickled. And it would be about a 3-month. If we haul this route, it's 4 months, just for obvious reasons.
So, Mr. Chairman, what we're looking for, if the board would consider this, is just authorization to approve the MOU as currently drafted so that we can kind of let ITD know that the board is supportive of that endeavor and to also engage Welch-Comer at the $38,000 level to help with some of this pre-work given the green light on the MOU.
You need 2 motions or 1?
We can do that all in one motion.
I'm waiting.
Well, I would make that motion to approve as stated.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions?
Olivia, that's-
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Phil.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to Tommy.
Great.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Next on the agenda is Board Commissioner comments. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion for adjournment, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Jeff, that's a wrap.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks all you Zoom callers.